Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Inside Out Smile. I'm your host Dr. Amber Q, and today I wanted to talk about stories. I wanted to talk about, and when I mean stories, I don't mean Instagram stories. I mean, that whole narrative approach. Speaking of which, that was my research dissertation for my MBA project, because it's always been so close to my heart. So I've been thinking about stories for years and years and years, and I think as the world is changing, I feel that I came across an article the other day, and that's really what I kind of wanted to chat about. And the article really was all about how if we shift from the narrative or story approach to perspectives, we can actually enhance our sort of mental health, our sort of, mindfulness, and, just our self-improvement as well. So why do I want to speak about this now? I think because now there are so many false narratives that are being fed by oppressors that, I don't know, I just feel it's really important to think that there's so much chaos right now. There's so much chaos. So how can we shift between different stories? And also, just how do we know which stories are holding us back ourselves? And I mean, we know, don't we, from history, and everyone says this, that humans are natural storytellers. After all, before any of these media empires existed, whether it was radio, whether it was television or the internet, we know that humans survived and entertained themselves and learnt by stories. And we're natural storytellers. But it's interesting because I think the thing is that some people have said that narratives can sometimes restrict our thinking. And we know that, right? Because we hear a story and we're limited, then that is an issue because of the story that we've been telling ourselves. But also, I think that in today's society, sometimes we're given a false sense of order, or should I say, world order. But really, I want to speak about sort of how just embracing perspectives over those rigid stories or narratives can lead to better mental well-being for ourselves, greater personal growth, mindfulness, and a better world for others as well, which in turn makes it a better world for ourselves. So when we think about stories, we know that it gives structure, right? It turns mundane events into meaningful lessons, I guess, really. And even philosophers said that kind of inherently our lives kind of have, like we depend upon a narrative structure just to have an understanding of our actions. But then I think philosophers also said that obviously these narratives limit our mental health, our freedom, because they just kind of make everything that's complex. And I guess if there are nuances in life, it kind of restricts that, right? And then, of course, there is narrative therapy, which seeks to, I guess, really to help people construct new, more helpful stories about their lives. But is that in essence just swapping one story for another, even if it's more kind of, I guess, better for them? Because essentially, to really enhance mental well-being, we should explore possibilities beyond storytelling, because one story over another, even though it may be more helpful, is still kind of limited. And if you think about mindfulness, It's all about living in the present. I'm just using mindfulness here as an example because that's not the only approach, I guess. Or I guess, it's really the crux of the matter is to live in the present, to live in the now. But I'm just going to call it mindfulness for the moment. But basically, obviously, that encourages us to kind of embrace each moment, not to have judgment, just to be in the now, in the present. And I think the thing is that if we shift from that whole kind of story or narrative to perspectives, then we engage the world much more mindfully, really. And that's kind of the way the world really is, because perspective is all about beliefs and values, and that gives us a better understanding, I think, of life. And this article that I was reading was saying how it helps us to embrace authenticity and self-discovery. And they mentioned this poem. It's called 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird. And it's kind of like you look at each of those 13 stanzas as like separate mini poems or as one whole thing, but it's different ways of looking at a blackbird, essentially, which is why it's called 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird. Do blackbirds, I don't know, are they just native to the UK and Europe, or are they all over the world? I don't even know that. But yeah, let me know if you don't have blackbirds where you are. Substitute for another bird. But basically, if we embrace kind of being in the present, then we need to accept that different perspectives will have different insights on the same reality, which is essentially what the poem's about, because there are 13 different ways of looking at a blackboard, at a blackbird. And similarly, there are 13 or umpteen different ways of looking at anything if you look at things from a different perspective. So I think that if we're mindful about different perspectives, then we're going to be really focused on the present, and we're going to be more self-aware. And I guess, it's going to improve our mental health, because it's going to make us focus on personal growth. And also it's what is personal growth, right? So personal growth is that we can, learn new things, right? Having that growth mindset. So when we look at different perspectives and we're mindful of different ways of looking at things, then we're going to be more willing to basically challenge limiting narratives. And I think that's so important in today's age of genocides. But also, and I don't say but by negating that at all, but it's just that if we have new perspectives, we open ourselves to diverse experiences and just being more resilient, more adaptable. And it just makes us more, I think, authentic, really. So, and when we are more authentic, we can evolve personally, we can become more resilient, as I was saying, and we're going to embrace change. And I think that, there are some, oh my gosh, we're living in such a strange time in society. But the thing is that, there are some people who were really blinkered in their thinking. And because of the things that we have seen online, they've been forced to have a different perspective, right? Because they were told a narrative, for example, of Palestinians, and then they've seen things on social media and they've seen things from a different perspective, and it's made them redefine their narratives, and they've grown personally. I don't know if it's helped actually their mental well-being with everything that's happening, but in a sense, at least they're on the right side of history. And so the thing is, I guess when we focus on perspectives rather than a story, we are expanding our potential, aren't we, as humans? So I don't know. I mean, I think really all I'm saying is, I was reading this article where it said we need to shift from narrative approaches to looking at different perspectives. And I agree, because essentially when we do that, we know that there are different perspectives. We can appreciate that. It makes our life more rich. And by virtue of that, it helps us to grow. We understand others better. We understand ourselves better. And it makes better world, you know? And I think that's the thing. So I don't know. So I thought it was a great article, by the way. I saw it in passing and it really made me think, because there have been so many people that have been staunch followers of a particular narrative from mainstream media, and that's totally changed now because of social media and because they've seen the true story. I think the thing is that what I was saying was that, yeah, people have been forced, well, some people have actually been forced out their narrative thinking, forced out the story that they believed in, because it was just there, it's just been there in front of them on social media. And, you know, and it's very uncomfortable on the one hand, because on the one hand, you know, I suppose, you know, you just feel helpless and powerless, but then we're not helpless and powerless, because when we look at that different perspective and we can understand and empathize with that as much as, you know, I don't know, as much as possible, because if we're not experiencing those things, you know, I don't know, but we can understand or we can empathize that this should not be happening. And I mean, I don't know, we say we feel their pain, but how can we? Because it's so awful. But, you know, that in itself, I think has really, when we think about how the whole, I think, I don't know, you know, when you look at social media, everything seems to have changed. It's not about celebs and things anymore and their luxury lifestyle. Everything's moved towards kind of deeper connection, I feel, and authenticity. And I think that comes from that. It comes from that shift of the narrative, doesn't it? Which is why the oppressors have, you know, spent a lot of money trying to buy, you know, to buy bots and things, and to buy out influencers, etc., to get them to change their narrative into a false narrative. But those many have not accepted that, and they've spoken about it. So it's so interesting. So we've got authenticity, what's actually happening. Some people trying to promote a false narrative, and do politicians do that as well? I guess, I don't know. Yes, I do know. Sorry, they do. So, but essentially, so we've got sort of the reality of what's happening and different perspectives within that reality. But there is a reality of what's happening. For example, I'm referring to the genocide here. You've got some people trying to peddle a false narrative, which just isn't working, because people that previously had been sucked in by that narrative have now seen the different perspective on the ground. And although they're shocked, appalled, by it, shocked and appalled by what's happening, it's kind of enriched their life. They know they're on the right side of society and they feel that they've grown. So you can see it kind of happening in real time, which is why when I saw this article in passing, I was like, oh my gosh, that's happening right now. Maybe that's why the article was written, although I think, I don't know, actually, maybe that's why the article was written, although it didn't mention it. But yeah. So that's incredible, isn't it? I think. And it's really interesting because I saw something about John Legend saying that people in Hollywood are scared to speak out for Gaza. So they're people that are scared to speak against the narrative that's being peddled. So I guess there is, I don't know, a false narrative that's being pushed because, is a false narrative an agenda? I guess it is, right? And so that's being pushed. But I guess, if you look at any situation in life or any, like even someone who mugs someone, they'll rationalize it because they've got their own narrative or their own story. They don't look at the perspective of their victim. So, we can, put this in any context. But I think it's particularly pertinent at the moment. I don't know. Sorry, I'm pausing because I'm just thinking about it so much because I think it's fascinating, which is why I wanted to share it with you, because on the one hand, it just seems so simple. How have we had stories without looking at other people's perspectives, or narratives? But I guess this is what happens. And when you're able to look, I don't know, I was going to say, or think rather out of the box, but not just out of the box, out of the story, or the story that you're being told, then yeah, you see different perspectives and you grow from that. I hope this is making sense. Anyway, until the next episode, let's all create connection. Let's look at different perspectives, and let's not just change lives, but let's save lives.